G'day guys and welcome to Raging Rhino. With the 7th episode of The Acolyte coming out and of course the entire disaster that this entire series has been for Star Wars, there's a couple of things that I just quickly wanted to touch on and talk about that I just couldn't let slide. I just couldn't not talk about these things and give my opinions and my thoughts on them. Now the first thing that I just want to touch on is the fact that this entire series is making more Star Wars fans disappear. I think even after The Last Jedi, Star Wars fans, for some strange reason, even with all the shows and the disastrous shows that we've got on Disney Plus, they still had some hope that Disney Lucasfilm could actually make a correction and actually make some good Star Wars. The unfortunate thing is they can't, and they haven't. And the people that are working at Lucasfilm actually have no idea what Star Wars is or how to even write or convey good Star Wars. So I just wanted to quickly go over the ratings here. The Acolyte Nelson ratings. Disney's Star Wars fan base plummets by 75%. And it's not surprising based on the fact of how bad this show actually is and the constant law-breaking, canon destruction, and then of course there is the writing, the acting, and the way that this show is portrayed on screen that just, it's so disastrous. I think everybody's getting more enjoyment out of watching people's YouTube video reviews of this show than they are in regards to watching the actual show. They care more about seeing people shit all over this series as opposed to actually watching it, because nobody out there other than the Disney shills and the Disney seals think that this is Star Wars. Other than the shippers, the pronoun people on Twitter, and I don't know, some of the LGBTQ community. That's really it. They're the only ones that actually think that this is Star Wars and that this is actually any good. And now it does surprise me a little bit that the only thing that actually is below this is Andor. Now, to me, Andor is garbage. It's boring and it does a bit of damage. It's probably the best constructed story. If you were to take that out of the Star Wars universe, it wouldn't be too bad, I guess. I do have my problems with it though, and I've talked about those on a plethora of videos. So I don't really want to get too much into that. And I know that there are people out there that are angry that I even say stuff like that. However, that's not the main reason for the video. I wanted to talk about Amandla Stenberg's appearance on The View, right? Like, I know a lot of people have talked about this and a lot of people have broken it down. And I'm going to go through this clip that, thank you, Steph, my nerdy home, she put out there on Twitter. I wouldn't have even known that she went on there, to be honest with you. But we're going to go through this and we're going to break this down a little bit just to see how it's so funny. They play the victim card and there's so much in this clip that it really does fall on deaf ears. It's the same playbook. It's the same play from the same playbook that they keep rolling out every time, and then they become the victims. Even though the only main criticisms that people are giving for this is exactly what Steph says here. It's the acting, it's the writing, it's the law breaking. It's really got nothing to do with the color of their skin or anything like that. So let's take a listen to what Amandla Stenberg had to say about Star Wars, about the Star Wars fan base on The View, of all things. A show that Star Wars fans don't bother to watch because they're just cackling hens on a show talking about their political ideals. So let's just take a listen and break down some of this.
Feels so current now with the light and the dark that we're seeing in our country.
See, I've got to pause it straight away. They went into this talking about how there's the light and the dark in our country right now. Of course, you've got Trump and Biden, and Trump is the dark and Biden's the light. They've got to make it all political. Can we talk about Star Wars here? Not actually have to bring in the real world or bring the real world into the show. And it's so funny. Amandla Stenberg sitting there going, absolutely. Let's keep going.
And let me ask you this. Unfortunately, the success of this show has made you a target.
The success of the show has made her a target. The success of the show, are we really saying that this show is actually successful? You've got a 14% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. even Grace Randolph, and all these people that were basically backing this up and behind it for the first 6 episodes can't even back this up now coming into the 7th episode. It's mind-boggling to think that they're actually even saying that the success of this show has made her a target. It made her a target for what? The criticism of the show? The criticism of her acting? Because both of them are horrible. It's got nothing to do with the fact that she's a woman, and it's got nothing to do with the fact that she's a black woman. Let's continue, though.
Show has made you a target by some in the right wing for the inclusive casting.
Some in the right wing for the inclusive casting. I mean, we haven't even gotten through the first question here, and it's full of just buzzwords and this and that. Like, again, who out of any Star Wars fan out there is watching The View, for God's sake? The right wing. The right wingers are the only ones that are criticizing this. I'm sure there are probably some lefties out there that disagree with that statement.
Which is something Whoopi talks about all the time. You have received horrific racist backlash, including threats, and what you call intolerable racism. That is your quote.
Intolerable racism, death threats. We're yet to see any receipts. This reminds me of the Obi-Wan Kenobi show and the death threats that Moses Ingram was getting, and the fact that we got the car video from Ewan McGregor. Again, it's the same play out of the exact same playbook every single time. Why are you reading this off a card? Shouldn't you already know and be able to say what you want to say, convey what you want to convey without actually having to read this on a card? Are these little notes that Disney Lucasfilm has given you to make sure that you ask these questions? Amandla Stenberg's the one that came out with a diss track towards the fans because of their criticisms of the show, the writing, the acting. I'm yet to see one racist comment that is targeted towards the Acolyte when it comes to actual racism, death threats, anything like that. I need to see the receipts for this before I even start to believe it, and so should you.
Can you talk about that a little bit, and what has that been like?
Yeah, absolutely. And I really appreciate you giving me the space to speak about it.
Oh, your little safe space to speak about it, your little platform here.
It's been very painful for me. It's not something that I think you can...
I bet it's been painful for you to hear everyone say that you can't act and that your facial expression is exactly the same in every single scene, even though you're playing 2 different characters and you play both of them exactly the same. I bet it has been painful for you. I don't believe for 1 second that you're receiving racist death threats until I see the receipts. And let me just say this. If we do see receipts of people throwing death threats towards Amandla Stenberg for her performance or for the show, that needs to be called out. And I would be one of the first. There'd be so many people out there that are criticizing this show for the crap that it is that would still call out those people for their death threats.
Emotionally prepare for. And we welcome criticism of the show when it comes to storytelling or performance.
I call bullshit. I call bullshit because the majority of the criticism out there has been targeted towards the show, not necessarily towards the actors. We've given some criticism towards the actors for their absolute horrible acting. The problem is that the script that they were given is that one of the biggest problems, and the directors and the people behind the show are the ones that are telling you to act it this way. But for you to come out here and say, especially after your diss track, and say that we accept all forms of criticism as long as it's got to do with the show, and your diss track had nothing to, was targeted towards attacking the fans for those criticisms, I call bullshit.
But when it comes to death threats, horrific, violent, racist language, it's unacceptable to me. And I've had to think really deep and hard about when you display discipline and when you display honor. And I guess what I mean by that is when do you decide to utilize discipline to not engage in a reactive way to
Oh, so like your diss track, right? Like your diss track.
hatred. And when do you decide to engage in honor by honoring your values and your belief system? And
How about the people over at Lucasfilm start honoring Star Wars and start honoring George Lucas's Star Wars instead of changing it and making it something that it's not? Dave Filoni being rude.
in this case, I decided that was the most important thing to me, to be vocal, because I think that silence can send a message as well, and
silence
inaction
is
can
violence.
be very dangerous.
It can be very dangerous.
And so I dropped a diss track.
That's what I.
They got the chickens cackling. She got the chickens cackling because she dropped a diss track. You just said you just basically said that you're thinking about the honor and all of this kind of thing, and you completely contradicted yourself in basically one sentence by saying that you feel like you can take on the criticism as long as it's got to do with the show, and you think about how honorable you can be about combating that criticism, but then go on to say that I dropped a diss track. Yak, 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 yak.
I heard, as one does with musical ability.
I dropped a diss track about it, and there it is.
I love that. My goodness.
And it's called Discourse, and it really.
And it was really, really bad.
Is about, I mean, of course, what I've been experiencing, but it's also just about the divisiveness of the culture and how difficult it is for all of us now to navigate information in this new era.
See, this reminds me, what she's just said there kind of makes me think of Kamala Harris, right? It's word garbage just coming out of her mouth because, let's just listen to that again for a second.
What I've been experiencing, but it's also just about the divisiveness of the culture and how difficult it is for all of us now.
The divisiveness of the culture. Now, look, I'm not going to say that there hasn't been a lot of divisiveness in the culture, but when you actually look at something like The Acolyte, it is overwhelmingly considered to be a bad show. Poorly written, poorly acted, poorly constructed, and definitely a massive destruction and a massive flip the bird to George Lucas, Star Wars, and Star Wars fans.
Now, to navigate information in this new era, it's so difficult to tell what is true, online, and these online algorithms, they shape our realities and our thinking, and clickbait journalism and
the journalists put out clickbaity titles defending your garbage show. All the YouTubers out there that are actually reviewing this and criticizing it, yeah, they want people to click on their videos. Of course they do. They want people to see what their thoughts are of your show. But at the end of the day, the clickbaity titles, well, like my last one, just saying Star Wars The Acolyte, Episode 7 review, Disney Star Wars, just wow. It's such a clickbaity title, isn't it?
These algorithms also profit from our rage and our hatred. And I feel like that's something we are aware of, but we don't necessarily have enough discourse or infrastructure around because it's so.
But you don't give a fuck about your discourse. You're so bored you don't fuck with the discourse, right? Isn't that right, Amandla?
New.
Yeah, it's also discipline. It takes a lot of discipline to you talking about ignoring. The first thing I'm going to remind everyone watching is that her character is fictional.
That's such a stupid statement. Whoopi Goldberg has become dumber and dumber in her older age as she's getting older. Majority of shows are fictional characters. Does that mean that we can't criticize them? And especially when it comes to Star Wars that has such a rich, diverse structure of lore, canon, and continuity, and you've got to try and abide to those rules as a creator of these shows, and the people that have loved these franchises for their entire lives, like myself, sit there and go, how, why, what are they're changing this? Why are they doing this? It's a fictional character. Yes. Does that mean we can't criticize it? That's such a stupid thing to say, Whoopi.
Yeah.
Right.
So the fact that you
Right.
are responding to this fictional character.
What? And saying that she can't act and she can't act as this fictional character? Is that a problem to you, Whoopi? The fact that we're criticizing the fact that they're destroying a fictional universe that was created by George Lucas decades and decades ago, that's a problem to you? These are the kind of mindless nitwits that just sit there and clap and, this is great. They don't have any critical thinking whatsoever.
Yeah.
As though you were having dinner with her and she changed overnight.
The thing is if you're talking about Star Wars being dinner and it changed overnight, then yes, that's exactly what we're saying, Whoopi. It changed in the last 12 years since Disney's taken over Star Wars. Disney Star Wars isn't Star Wars. It has changed from what the original creator did and wanted it to be. So yes, we're going to sit here as fans of that franchise, fans of that IP, and criticize the shit out of it. You absolute moron.
For you.
Yeah.
So always remember that the people who are yelling at you often are bots.
Oh, they're bots, are they? They're bots. Not like the bots that are actually positively reviewing it. There's a lot of bots on Twitter that are going, this is great, this is amazing. A lot of bots that are actually going the other way. A lot of the people that I watch, though, are actual people that I'm seeing in their YouTube videos that are talking about how bad this is. And then I've got constant people in my comments section, constant people on my live streams that talk about how bad this is. I'm not going to deny that there's bots out there because they are. But I would say that they are trying to overwhelmingly put positive bots out there on Twitter especially and stuff like that to try and make it seem like that this is some kind of success.
And not real.
That's true.
And
So if they're not real, then why are we even having this conversation? Why are we even having this conversation? Were they bots that sent you the death threats? Were they bots that are the ones that are doing the clickbaity titles? Are they bots the ones that criticized you because of your skin color? It's interesting that you bring up the bots thing and you're having this discussion about criticizing the show.
don't know you like you know you, and don't know that you can kick your own behind better than anybody else can. Put them out of your mind. They don't matter.
Yeah, okay. I don't think we need to watch anymore. I don't think we need to watch anymore. Because again, fictional characters, like everything that we watch, almost everything that we watch is fictional. You know, I've just recently started watching House of the Dragon, and I've gotten, 4 episodes into the first season. And my God, is that show actually kind of decent. Like, I've really enjoyed watching those first 4 episodes. It's compelling. The characters are compelling. The story's interesting. It's well written. It's well directed. It's well shot. And I'm sure there's not too many contradictions in the story, although I don't really know because I've never read the books when it comes to that. But I tell you what, it's definitely a really, really good show from my perspective anyway. So that's a fictional story. What if we were criticizing that? Is that not okay because it's fictional? Or are we just bots? I just, this is the thing. They're trying to do this damage control. Disney keep trying to report it as some kind of major success, kind of like what was said at the very beginning of this clip. And it's not. It's not Star Wars. It's not a good show. It's not well written. It's not well acted. It destroys lore, canon, and continuity from good original Star Wars. And it's an abomination. And the fact that we get Amandla going on The View that nobody's going to watch, especially when it comes to Star Wars fans, seems pretty pointless to me, if you ask me. Anyway, that's my thoughts on this. I needed to go through that and I needed to break that down with you because it's mind-blowing to see how they had all the mainstream and the access media coming out in defense of this show. Now you're getting a lot of those after episode 7, especially starting to backpedal on that because they've realized how much of an abomination and how much of a disaster it really is. And it's mind-blowing to know that we're 12 years now into Disney Star Wars, and it's been completely dismantled, completely pulled apart, and we're still the ones that are at fault for criticizing this absolute garbage. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Later, guys.